Did you know that according to the U.S. Census Bureau, in 2020, 24.7 million children, 33% of the children in the United States, lived in fatherless homes? This number has increased by 25% since 1960. There are several reasons why children are growing up without their fathers, and we are seeing the adverse effects it is having upon them. We constantly hear of many phobias and isms that the leftists accuse conservatives of promoting or being: transphobia, homophobia, arachnophobia. But I think we're actually dealing with a pandemic of manphobia.
Welcome to the Josh Calloway Podcast.
Thank you, and welcome to the Josh Calloway Podcast. This is Josh Calloway, State Representative in the 10th District of Kentucky. And other than that, I think a pretty good guy from what his wife says. Got my good friend Aaron here with me tonight. How you doing, Aaron?
I'm doing all right. I'm trying to follow.
Would you agree with my wife there, or are you kind of on the other side as well?
Well, I think I would agree, but there's a bunch of Twitter people that don't agree. So you got some stalkers on there, I've noticed.
Well, the good thing is that Twitter, the Twitterverse is not the real universe, pretty much. So,
right. Well, you know.
But unfortunately, there are real people that are on there that seek to destroy other people's lives. And
wait, so is Twitter called X now, or is it just called X Twitter?
I don't know. I think you don't tweet anymore. I think you X.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that works. I haven't figured it out yet.
Re-X. I don't know. Anyway.
Either way, I am state representative in the 10th District of Kentucky and have the honor to represent the people here and the conservative values of the people of Kentucky and the people of this district. And Aaron is a good friend of mine. He's joined me for these podcasts, and we've been able to get some truth out there to people. That's been the motive of why we're doing what we're doing.
Right.
And the truth sometimes doesn't always sit well with all people. Sometimes when somebody tells you the truth about yourself, it doesn't always sit well, but we know that ye shall know the truth, and truth shall make you free. Right. And there's freedom that is found in truth. And so we've been trying to get that out, and want to talk tonight about this issue that we're dealing with in our country of fatherhood, or the lack of fatherhood and manhood. And there are many things that we're going to go through as we talk through this tonight, but we are seeing the effects of what has happened because men have been so far removed statistically from the home, and it has become a pandemic. We have children that are being raised without fathers, that have no manly guidance in their life. And there are so many resilient women that have taken on loads that they were never intended, or maybe didn't intend, go into a relationship with the intent of having to carry the load of being a single parent. And we have men that are doing the same thing as well on both sides of it. But there has definitely been an attack on the family unit. And we have seen this attack that has happened. It was happening subtly, and then all of a sudden it just came all out. Groups like the group BLM and people like that just said that there's really no place for the nuclear family, and that it was their go to disrupt it and dismantle it.
Right.
And how's that working out for us? That's my question, and that's what I want to look at as we go through this tonight. I don't think that as we look at our society, I don't think it's worked very well for us.
Right.
We see what we are dealing with from a crime perspective, what we're dealing with children that are depressed and are suicidal and are dealing with all kinds of struggles. And I think one of the major factors of that is that they lack guidance. They are lacking that manly, fatherly guidance that would stabilize them in this world that is definitely rocking and reeling. It's not stable. Right. And we're being attacked from every hand. We have social media that we've actually are seeing some lawsuits that are coming about where parents are suing some of these in school districts are suing some of these platforms because they have seen the adverse effect that it's had upon children. And all of this plays into the family unit, right, and what moms and dads are not doing in giving guidance to their family and in their home, and people being in their place. And it's had an adverse effect for sure.
Yeah. And there's this idea that has, been around for a very long time, centuries, but it always kind of crops up like in very wealthy societies that have found a place of ease. And then they start, hypothesizing about this thing called a gynocentric society, which is like a woman-centric society.
Yeah.
And I think you probably read about it, at least in theory, with Aristotle and Plato and all those guys. And if we can be honest about those guys, they didn't have anything to do except sit around and be philosophers all day, lounging on the Greek Pantheon steps or whatever. Yeah. And the same thing is true later on in Roman culture. Whenever a super successful society reaches a place of extreme stability and dominance, mm-hmm, then people all of a sudden just start deciding that men and women are totally separate and they don't need, they're better off if they're just total individuals. No and it eventually goes into the no gender, nothing like that. Yeah. It's just, and then that society completely fails. And the reason why is because societies have always been built by men and women working together.
Right.
And there's a class of people that arise that are most of the time self-centered and, extremely selfish and most of the time not very smart, that whenever they get into power, then they forget all of the good work that has been done by men and women working together in natural roles where they each fit to right, their strengths. And I think, I was kind of following a little bit that there's an update just a few minutes ago about Ukraine launching their like massive counteroffensive. They've been kind of doing what they call like staging and things like that. Mm-hmm. And then, trying to figure out. That is one of the main war, especially on any type of global scale or continental scale, is one of the main resets throughout history of these ideologies.
Right.
Because men have to immediately take a role that women simply just cannot take on. And that is going to the front lines, putting their life on the line and dying if necessary for the future of their families, to save the women and to save the children.
Yeah.
And this has been a reset throughout history, right, constantly. And it highlights again that whenever we are in such a place of privilege and stability, not privilege because of the color of our skin, but because of the men and women that have bled and died to provide us, right, our society, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, let's focus on the men. They're terrible. Let's, we have to have the women run everything.
Well, think about this. Listen to some of these statistics. So I said 24.7 million. So 33% of children in the U.S. are living in fatherless homes. Children that live in fatherless homes, this has increased 25% since 1960. 45.6% of black children lived with their mother only in 2021. Almost half, almost 1 out of 2. 85% of children with absent fathers statistically get involved in the crime. 70% of children in fatherless homes have dropped out of high school. Children that live in fatherless homes are 4 times more apt to live in poverty. Girls raised in fatherless homes are 8 times more apt to become a teenage mother. 85% of all children living without a father experience some type of behavioral disorder. Teenagers with positive and nurturing fathers are 80% less apt to go to prison, and 20.2% of fathers are considered absent fathers, according to 2019 data that come from the U.S. Census Bureau. And so I'm just saying that. So the role of man has basically could be summed up in 2 words from a societal standpoint. I think protector, provider, protector, provider.
Right.
We're there to protect and we are there to provide. And what we have seen is that the role of man and manhood as a whole, they have been emasculated by this push for feminism that basically has pushed men back in the corner. Shut your mouth, be passive,
Right.
don't be aggressive,
Yeah.
be almost effeminate. And this began to happen decades ago.
Right.
And especially if you're a white male, keep your mouth shut. You have no business having any type of role in society except to be in a corner somewhere with
Shut
your
up
mouth
and pay
shut
your taxes.
and pay your taxes. But that protector provider mentality, what's happened to it?
Yeah.
What has happened to that? Because I remember as a teenager, and I got married at 19 years old. So I was young when I got married. But there was this sense of how many jobs do I need to work? Not how little can I work, but do I need 2 jobs to get married? Because I want to get married. I want to have a family. And there was this sense of making sure in the middle of the night, if a noise was heard, if something happened that seemed off, my role was to protect my family, see what it is, see what's going on. We have seen that totally bombarded by the left to say that men are to be passive, they're to be effeminate, they are to take a lesser role. And because of that, I believe that it has led us to or promoted a lot of this lack of fathers inside of the home.
Yeah. And I mean, my favorite are like the stay-at-home dads, and Pete Buttigieg taking 6 months off for paternity leave for a baby that there was no way him or the guy that he lives with could possibly have brought into the world. You know? They got to take paternity leave on taxpayer money. And I mean,
in the midst of a crisis, we couldn't get material offloaded off of ships, and
trains crashing
backed
everywhere.
up, and we're dealing with all of that, and he's AWOL, fulfilling a role that is not even a role that he can fulfill or they can fulfill,
even in a place
in a
where
correct
they want
way.
Yeah, even in a place where they want to say that they have a family that has 2 fathers. Then they're acting like 2 women. You know what I'm saying? That's how bad the fatherless, pandemic is in our country. And I mean, think about this story with Hunter Biden about his child that he fathered with this lady under spurious circumstances. Like, obviously there was an imbalance of power there and some money being transferred and whatever. But however the case is that he became a father, he is not fulfilling any of the roles that a father should fill in that child's life. And he received everything that he wanted as far as for his desires in order to produce that child. He got everything that he wanted. He paid for everything that he wanted, or everything that he requested, then he got. But whenever this child was brought into the world, he has to fulfill none of the roles that are necessary. He doesn't have to pay, the child support that lives up to what he's actually made. None of that. And the whole media and even the president of the United States of America covers for him for being an absolute deadbeat.
Yeah.
And there are people on social media, and we could name names and I won't, so you wouldn't have to edit it out. But there are people, for instance, on social media who leave their wives and run down the church that they went to and all of this stuff. Or, there's this big thing about leaving cults and all this. I'm leaving the Independent Fundamental Baptist. And most of those people, at least the ones that I know, are complete deadbeat idiots, right?
Yeah.
Who can't even work a job. And their wives who haven't worked, and then they go get a job and they succeed and they provide for their family. And I guess it just burns them up or something because they just can't handle it.
Yeah.
You know? But it's because we're living in a society that celebrates. You know, it started out with feminism saying, well, we don't need men to fulfill the traditional roles that men have always fulfilled. Well, what are men supposed to do?
Yeah.
What role are men supposed to fulfill? Are they supposed to just, as you said, you know, just sit over in the corner somewhere? And I could ask you this. I know you've probably done more research in, you know, the education field and all those things whenever you used to be on the education committee and whatnot. But does it seem like to you that men were run out on purpose so that the LGBTQ ideology and all of the ideologies that are in the schools can prey upon those fatherless children? Is that what it seems like to you? Or
let me say a couple things.
How it happens?
You brought up a great point. Well, first, let me go back to what you were saying about Hunter Biden. So that provider part is definitely an issue in our society. So we have deadbeat dads that will not take care of their children financially. But we also know it's not everything, right? The financial part is not everything because Hunter he gave her some of those finger paintings, you know?
He can finger paint and he can smoke crack. You know what I mean?
He gave her the finger paintings, and it's evident that you can make it brings tons. They bring tons of money and can also get you a role in government, you know? So it goes beyond just providing for, right?
Right.
But you brought up a great point to remove the man out of the way, and this is what it brings us to. You know, I was looking and reading an article about Riley Gaines, and she's been in the media talking about trying to protect women's sports and trying to make sure that that entity of sports is protected from biological men competing against them. But after what happened with Will Thomas, she had to compete against him. They literally tied. They gave the trophy to him because they said they had to because he claimed to be a woman. And, you know, it's this strange phenomenon that somehow it's pretty sad, really, that I think it was like 5th. Is that what they placed at? Right. You know, and here he is. But either way, this is what she said. She said that when all that happened, he was in their locker room. He exposed himself, as he has not had any type of trans surgeries. So
he has now, I think.
Yeah, he hadn't at the time. Exposes himself to these females. And then she said that literally no man stood up for them. They waited. They asked. They expressed their concern. And no manly figure stood up and said, you know what? It's not okay for another man to expose himself to girls. Yeah. It's not okay for this to happen. It's not okay for this to take place. And there she was in this condition, this position, that not knowing how to handle it, not knowing what to do. Perfect opportunity for a protector to walk on the scene and to say, look, this is not going to happen. We are not going to allow this. This is not going to take place. We've seen it across the country with men who have said that they're going to go into women's bathrooms. Well, guess what? Guess what my role is? My role as a man is to be a protector.
Right.
It is to be a protector. But because of this pushing back on true manhood and what they want to call toxic masculinity, because they have pushed back on that so hard, we have women that are literally being exposed to undressed men, and no man is saying anything about it. And I know men are. I'm not saying that the media, there aren't people that have come out, but there was nobody there to protect. Right. Nobody there that she could go to immediately at the point, and a man with a backbone would walk out and say, this comes to an end.
Well, and he wasn't even on her swim team. I'm guessing they were competing at, the nationals or something like that. But he wasn't. He was from the University of Pennsylvania. Okay, so he, as far as I know, University of Kentucky doesn't have any trans men on their swim team. I have no idea.
Not
or
that I'm
whatever
aware.
they call, they call them trans women, but they're men. Doesn't have any men on their women's swim teams. He obviously was not going to go to UK and try to get on their swim team. So he goes into the Penn State swim team, and then there's a lady that had an interview, I think with Matt Walsh or something like that, where a lot of the girls were uncomfortable with it.
Right.
And even some that voiced their opinion, then they got taken into an office, and then whenever they come out of the office, then all of a sudden they're on board.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of threatening going on and all this stuff telling them to keep silent from male figures. Male figures are empowering this behavior. They're basically telling them, look, you do this or you're going to pay the consequences. So he goes on the University of Pennsylvania swim team. And then it's not like he said, well, I just want to be around my team and be a part of a team or anything like that. He wants to go to the nationals and expose himself in their locker rooms too.
Yes.
To women from other teams whose states don't support that and whose schools don't support that, because all it is about is gaining an avenue to do whatever he wants to do.
Right.
It doesn't matter how other people feel. It doesn't matter how it makes other people feel. It's how I feel and what I want to do, and that's all that's important. And men throughout society and throughout history have always been able to set the tone whenever people become so selfish that they're hurting everybody else around them.
Right.
Women have always been the more caring of the human species. They've been the more, because they're mothers and because they are actually able to produce a child in their body, then they have all of their hormones, everything aligns for them to be able to be caring. But whenever someone comes in and takes advantage of the way that women naturally are in caring for others and reaching out to others.
Yeah.
Whenever someone starts pushing their weight around, men have always been the one that stood up against them.
Yeah.
And said, no, that's too far. Nope, we're not doing that. That's too far. Right. And the attack on men in our society and the cowardice of men in our society has allowed these predators and these absolute bullies, these perverts, to take over entire spaces that are supposed to be safe for women. That's why you need men.
Well, we have seen some of the studies that have been done, and even interview with somebody who was a child predator. And he made the point. He said that when he was looking for a child that he could groom, that the first thing he would do is look for a child that had a weak father. And he said if he saw weakness in that father, he knew that he could get to that child, a good possibility that he could. And he would use that to be able to get to that child and do unbelievable, ungodly things. But this is affecting us in every area. In 2020, I believe it was 22% of men ages 25 to 34 were still living with their parents. It went down a little bit in 2022. So basically 1 in 5 men, 25 to 34, cohabit with their parents. They still live with their parents.
Like probably 60% of that 20% are constantly tweeting at you on Twitter. So, maybe that's from their parents' basement or something. Maybe that's how they can do that all day long.
And the thing about it is that what the point of the article was that a child or a man in that age group with a good job living with their parents could maximize that and actually, do really well financially but that's not the case. That's not what's happening. What we're seeing a lot of times is that the parent is keeping that man up. They're not carrying the load. They're not doing much work. And because of that, it puts a strain on the family, but it also is putting out men that are not masculine into our society.
Right.
And these are the people that are starting families. These are the people that are going to be hold positions and leadership roles inside of our society. And because of the fact that they have either not been taught what it is to be a man, or they are not showing forth those manly qualities, it has allowed for a lack of guidance in every area. Our children in our society, we live in one of the most unguided societies that there has ever been. It is do what feels good. Children, just this week, Jefferson County Public School System had a board meeting in which that they were supposed to be discussing how they were going to implement Senate Bill 150. And there were 2 fourth graders that came and spoke at that meeting that were discussing the adverse effects that this was going to have on them, because that they were possibly not going to be called by the right pronouns. 4th graders, young children, and then parents that are supportive of a 4th grader telling them, this is who and what I am and how I'm going to lead my life, and the whole world just needs to get on board. That's not the world I grew up in.
Yeah.
My dad expected me to get on board with his guidance. He gave it to me, and the expectation was, if you want to slide your feet under my table that I provide the food for, if you're going to sleep in the bed that I bought, I give the guidance, you do what you're told, and if we need to talk about it, we'll talk about it. But at the end of the day, there was that masculine authority that was there, and it wasn't toxic. It wasn't overbearing. It was the rightful role that dads are supposed to play in our society.
Right. I read this article. It's by Peter Wright. It's called Transphobia versus Manphobia. And it's kind of, it's from 2022. I'm guessing that he's a psychologist of some sort. Anyway, in his studies, and he cited a bunch of studies, and basically they said, there's a lot of different reasons why men decide that they want to try to transition into women, and people have I think, he said Aristotle even had hypothesized about this, because this was happening in Greek culture too. Which is one of those societies that I was telling you about.
Right.
And he said one of the most effective, if I'm understanding this correctly, one of the most effective and most pervasive ideas or realities, or in their studies, the most common evidence in men that decided, they were studying in the 80s and into the 90s, men that decided they wanted to transition into women, was growing up with moms that had severe mental issues, but mainly growing up in an environment where men were hated.
Yeah.
And so they're growing up at this environment where they're taught that men are terrible, and they're a male, they're a little boy. They're taught that men are terrible. Either they had an abusive father, and then the mother has a backlash to that, or the mother decides that she just hates men in general because maybe they ruined her life by her having a child. And this boy grows up in that environment where men are put down on all the time and hated, and he hates himself, and he wants to be something else.
Yeah.
That's our entire society right now. From every advertisement that you see, every man is either like a total like feminine, metrosexual, every dad is, or he's like the brunt of every joke. He's the total idiot of the family in advertisements and TV shows and movies, whatever. And if that's not the case, then the men that are actually strong, or that actually, take a leadership role, then they're hated and put down upon and told that they're bad. What is a little boy growing up in that society? What's he supposed to think?
Right.
All of his natural desires, he is being told that they're terrible, and that everybody hates them, and that everything that's wrong in the world is because of the desires that he has naturally.
Yeah.
So in his mind from a young age, then he's thinking, I don't want to be that. Right. And what he's not wanting to be is what he is naturally born to be.
Well, and the thing is CDC came out with a study and said that 26% of teenagers in high school now identify as LGBTQ. 12.2% identified as bisexual, 5.2 identified as questioning, 3.9 identified as other, 3.2 as gay or lesbian, and 1.8 said that they didn't understand the question. So that's what we're dealing with. It's that lack of guidance.
I don't understand it either.
And so when you have what you just described happen to, especially with young men, and those manly traits are not nurtured and guided in the right direction, and then are demeaned or pushed back in our society, this is where it goes.
And there's nobody there to be like, just like you're talking about here. There's nobody there to be like, no, son, this isn't a good way to express how you're feeling, right? This isn't, you don't rage at people whenever you're upset. This is how you control your emotions. This is how you control things in a way that benefits others. This is how you use that energy, use that anger to stand up whenever somebody's beating up a woman or somebody's like being unjust to another kid down the road. Instead of having somebody there that understands those feelings and has been taught how to channel those feelings in a manly way and not in a maniac or monster way, instead of having that there for the child, then he is just left with these feelings that nobody can tell him how to deal with. And his mother says, well, whenever you feel that, then that's the worst. Yeah. That's what's wrong with society.
Well, when you have this in a vacuum, what happens is...
Now, not all mothers are that way. I want to point that out. But as a general rule.
What happens, though, in this type of society, in a vacuum, all of a sudden emerges people who are going to fulfill that role, like people, influencers like Andrew Tate, that comes out and says... we're lacking in manhood and masculinity, and this is what manhood is. And you have young men that see that, and they see the cars, and they see the money, and they see the women, and they see all that's going on, and the fame that he has had. And they're like, well, that must be what a man is. That has to be what it is, and that's what we need to do. We need to get a sword and tell our wife to fix us something to eat for supper. That's where we end up. And it just brings it back to confusion. And there are people there that are influencers that say good things. There are people that give good guidance. Nothing can take the place of a dad being in his rightful place.
I've wanted to ask people this before. Can you try to think or project that number that you're talking about young people that identify as LGBTQIA plus brackets, hypotheses, ampersands?
Two-spirit.
Two-spirit, yeah. I don't really know what two-spirit means.
And then the plus is what is to come. But
and then MAP, minor attractive persons.
Yeah.
I wonder how. I wonder how many. I wonder what percentage that would be without social media. Have you thought about that? And to deny that percentage is astronomically higher because of social media would just be absolute lunacy, as well as just straight up lying.
There's no way that it would be where it's at without it. I think the other day, I can't remember what the age group was, but I read a study that in the early teenage years, I think it was early teenage years, that young people were spending at around or averaging around 8 hours of screen time per day during school time. So not that they were on during school time per se. It just means that all of their free time is being spent on screens, and they're seeing people, they're being influenced by people. And these absolute evil people behind some of these platforms have set up algorithms that target these kids They see what they look at. They see what they search. They see all of these things, and then they set them up to bait them constantly with desires that they have.
Yeah.
And so all of this, again, is a part of society and what's going on in our society. My point is that when the family unit is functioning as it should, we see much better results, and kids have a much better chance to have solid, good guidance and to be able to be successful and satisfied in life.
Here's an article from the New York Times. I don't know if I can pull it up or not. But this is a dude called James Charles. All right. So this is a dude. I don't know what's going on here. This is a dude who made a ton of money on YouTube doing makeup tutorials, right? And so I know this is wonderful. Okay, so the dude got caught messaging sexually underage boys all over, using his YouTube channel basically to gain, he's got tons of followers, 36.2 million. It was announced, he lost whenever all this stuff came out and all the messages came out. It took some time. But he got, he was temporarily, on Tuesday, a YouTube spokesperson said that the platform had temporarily suspended monetization on his channel. So YouTube immediately comes out and says that their suspension of monetization is temporary.
Yeah.
Even though he has been preying on underage boys, right, and come up with some kind of lame excuse. He's not demonetized anymore. This was 2 years ago. And Taylor Lorenz is writing it like one of the most, miserable trolls ever to exist on the face of the planet. Trolls under the bridge, Taylor Lorenz. But this dude is still on YouTube. He's back to being monetized. He's on TikTok. They just did some kind of big article on him in Vogue or something a couple of weeks ago, talking about his comeback, how he's making a comeback and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And somebody like Matt Walsh doesn't get an explanation. They don't get an article in the New York Times saying, well, he's temporarily suspended because he did some bad things.
Yeah.
He's standing up for kids so that they're not preyed upon. And he's completely demonetized, shut down, his account suspended. His account didn't even get suspended. Just the monetization got suspended. And he's actually preying on children.
Do you know why? I can tell you exactly why.
Yeah.
Because we are in the middle of a man-phobia pandemic.
Right. And it's almost like, it's just like you're
scared to death of a man that is authoritative, that is a protector and a provider.
But a feministic man who is feminizing other boys, trying to lead them into a lifestyle. A lot of them were talking about they weren't even, they didn't even claim to be homosexual at all. Then he's like leading them in because of his influence and because he's popular and because he has a lot of money. Then he's trying to draw them into a lifestyle that they have no experience or knowledge of.
Yeah.
First of all, there's no man there to say, hey, what are you doing messaging my son?
Yeah.
First of all. Second of all, then they are celebrating and allow these people that continue to feminize men more and more and more and more. They're celebrated and they're promoted and they're given all the money in the world and all the sponsorships in the world. But somebody who will simply stand up for men they absolutely try to destroy them.
Last week, I got the opportunity to speak with someone that is running for president of the United States on the Republican ticket. And we'll have some discussion about the presidential race in the future, and we'll talk a lot about it. I'm not necessarily endorsing this candidate. I like a lot of what he says, but it was Vivek Ramaswamy. And we were talking about what is going on in our country and how do we change the course of it? What do we do to change the course of it? And I made the point that the media and social media, everybody is bought in on this agenda. And so we're constantly having to deal with disinformation or deception and sort through that. And a lot of people just believe what they're told by the media. And I was talking about combating that. What do we do? How do we attack that? And he said, I think the only way we attack that is with the family unit. Mm-hmm. So we have to put God back in the home. We have to put dads back in their place, mothers in their place, children in their place. And we have to use that discernment given by God to sort through the deception. Mm-hmm. And that's not something that's just going to happen overnight. Yeah. But I believe we are seeing people that are waking up. I spoke with a gentleman yesterday, and he was telling me just out of the blue, we were having a conversation, and he began to tell me, he's like, he had a 7-year-old and a 2.5-year-old. And he's like, they literally get no screen time. None. He's like, we don't even put in front of them. He said, I think in the last year he showed, I can't remember, some pig movie. They have a farm, and he showed his child a pig movie the other day and let them see that. And he said, it was like a huge deal because they never watch movies. They're never, and I know what people are going to say. They're going to say all types of things, but I'm going to tell you something. A lot of the people that created these platforms with social media, they don't let their children just have at it. Yeah, they either keep them off of it, or they at least lay out parameters as to how that they handle it. And my point of saying that is this: just guide them. Right. Just give them guidance. Yeah. Just give them the guidance that works, that has been proven to work, and teach children. And instead of teaching children, same thing that's happening with Jefferson County School Board right now. All of this effort, all of this work, all of this arguing and fighting and refusing to abide by the law. Just to promote this LGBTQAI plus, backward, forward, whatever, SS, just to promote that. While kids can't read on their grade level. Yeah. They can't do math on their grade level. But that is what is going on. And we've got away from these basic teachings. And I truly believe that a large part of it is because we are lacking manhood and fatherhood, and that is what is produced.
And the simple fact is that if it doesn't change, then our society is going to be toast in not very long of a period of time. That's what we're talking about here. If something isn't corrected in this way, an existential threat to our society as we know it. Yeah. Now, there are people in power right now, the liberals, and that are in the bureaucracy, and they're convinced that we don't need any of this masculinity in order to succeed on the world stage, that we don't need any of this in order to protect ourselves and be safe. Mm-hmm. Okay, they're wrong. First of all, they live in these little bubbles, and they're totally stupid, and they don't know what's going on. Second of all, look at our foreign policy. Yeah. Our foreign policy screams that we are absolute weaklings right now. That's what it screams. This is what it produces. Do you know what happens whenever you do that on a world stage? People like Putin and Xi take over the world. That's the stakes that we're talking about here. Right? They're not backing down.
And then in the military, we're fighting to promote the ability to surgically remove a man's manhood. Yeah. That's what we are. And you know that China has to be dying laughing in the background when they see what we are doing over here, as they are setting themselves up to try to be the world power. And we are emasculating men. We are promoting all of these things, and children are being misguided or not guided at all. And we are one generation, and Reagan was correct. Right. Reagan was correct. We are always, our liberty, our freedom, our constitutional premise of what this nation was built upon, our freedom, is always just one generation away from extinction.
That's right. Yeah. There's speaking of the military and stupidity, then there's this article that was published. Now, they've changed this article since the first time I read it. And I read it on yesterday first. Family shouldered burden to transport body of Marine killed in Afghanistan, GOP rep says. So the representative is Corey Mills. And it's a lady who was in the military who was in the Afghanistan withdrawal. And she was one of the 13 who died. So the military flies her back to her hometown in California, and they have some services and do stuff there.
Yeah.
Well, her family is saying that the military didn't provide any kind of information for them about flying her to Arlington to be buried there. And originally, whenever I read it, then the representative from Florida had said that they told her that they were not going to pay for it. The Pentagon was not going to pay for it. And there's actually an amendment made to a bill, the National Defense Authorization Act from last year, that the Defense Department is no longer required to pay for the transport of fallen service members' bodies for multiple legs of a journey, just for one leg of the journey.
Yeah.
All right. So now the Pentagon has apparently influenced the story a little bit because they got really vague on the details, right? But I mean, they passed an amendment saying that they wouldn't have to transport her to Arlington. How stupid is this? There's a nonprofit that paid for it to take her there, $60,000. How stupid is this that our Pentagon will just say did not? I'm not going to say would not transport her, but did not transport her to Arlington Cemetery. She died, sacrificed her life trying to get Afghan people out of Afghanistan that were American allies that apparently our president doesn't even care about. And she died doing that. And they didn't even have the decency to step in and say, no, you're not handling this. We're going to take her to Arlington. Yeah. We're going to handle this for you. But they are going to step in and force taxpayers to fund men having their body parts removed.
Yeah.
So that they can express themselves however they feel. And they will not take care of a lady who sacrificed her life. It was sacrificed needlessly. Not without honor. It was with honor.
Right.
But needlessly on the altar of Joe Biden's stupidity and hubris.
Yes.
That's what there was no reason for her to die. And instead of us at least having the decency to honor her and bury her in our Arlington National Cemetery where our heroes are buried, then instead we're going to spend that money on, allowing a man to dress up in dresses and feel like he's a woman.
Yeah.
That's how pathetic we are.
Great quote right here. Great quote. Hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. Mm-hmm. And that is exactly what we're dealing with right now. Mm. We have weak men that are creating hard times. And here's the deal. This is a fact. You're quite a bit younger than me. I was reminded the other day when I celebrated my 25th wedding anniversary on July the 10th. And yes, for all of you out there that have all those nice things to say about me, I found a woman that has stayed with me for 25 years. So I can't be that bad.
Yeah.
But my point is that you're younger than me. You were in my wedding. You were the ring bearer in my wedding. So that'll give some of you the age difference here between Aaron and I. But we inherited a pretty good thing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I was born in 1979, so I came right in at the Reagan era.
Oh, goodness, you're old.
And I'm very old. I have 2 grandchildren. I have 2 that's going to be here in about 5 weeks. My daughter and daughter-in-law are both due right at the same time. And so got 2 more grandchildren coming at 44. I have 5 kids and fixing to have 4 grandkids. But we inherited a good thing. And what it promoted in my life because of the fact that I had a good life. I had a good upbringing. I didn't have to fight for what I had. I had good parents growing up. And it can make people weak. It can make us weak, and it can bring us to the place that we lose sight of and we are not discerning of what it takes to maintain that. Right. And so now what we have is we have weak men who grew up in good times, but because they did not understand, did not appreciate it, look at all the attack that began to happen. It started with the burning of the American flag. Mm. You know, we went through that era. People they hated on this country, and then we have football players making millions of dollars, but this country is so bad for them that they get down on their knee and will not even acknowledge whenever our national anthem is played. Yeah. And then that began to sweep across. We began to see all of that happen. Then we saw the BLM riots begin to take place, and America got casted as this hateful, racist country that is terrible for minorities to be a part of. And all of that was a breakdown and a result of the good times that we had, that created these weak people that did not understand that what we have has to be tended to. It has to be constantly maintained, right? Or we lose it. Yeah. And so now we've had this attack on men, this attack in the sense of manhood, and we have weaklings. Yeah. Absolute weaklings, people with no backbone. They cannot, and I talked to a 30-year-old today, a 30-year-old, and talked about, this is what you're going to need to do. You want to get your life in order? Tell you what you need to do. First thing you need to do is get up and go to work every day. Well, I don't know if I can do that. 30 years old, plays video games, smokes pot, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. And that's what life is to them. And I don't know all the background. I understand that things happen. But just because things happen doesn't mean that there's not a best. Right. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I spoke about women that have been resilient, women that have raised multiple kids, worked multiple jobs, and have went above and beyond and done phenomenal job with children. They have done that. Right. I'm not acknowledging that. I'm not saying that they're bad, that's bad. What I'm saying is there is a best. This is the best. Right. Husband, wife, child. Yeah. That's the best. And when we have that environment and people that have God in the center of their life, and I constantly have people, because I talk about God or talk about prayer, talk about faith. Well, you're just trying to shove your religion and your faith down everybody's throat. No, this is what I understand, that our founders understood and said, that what we have in our Constitution can only be maintained by a moral religious society. Right. So when we lose all morality and we lose our connection to God, guess what? The Constitution's going to go. Right. And it is.
Mm-hmm. You were talking about resiliency there, and I think that's something I wanted to kind of mention in passing. Maybe then, that people in terrible situations, if they put their mind to it, then they figure out a way to make it work, and not only just to make it work and survive, but also to succeed, right? We live in the most privileged society in the world that have every opportunity at their fingertips, and they're barely even struggling to survive. Yeah. They can't even figure out how to work enough to pay for a house to live in or anything like that. There's this big controversy because of our absolutely brilliant, super high IQ Vice President, Kamala Harris. She's making this big deal about Florida's, education and history guidelines and stuff like that. And she is saying that Florida has created a curriculum that talks about the benefits of slavery and saying that it's actually beneficial to black people.
Yeah.
And the curriculum was actually written by black people, black scholars, majority black scholars on the thing. And it actually just says that they learned skills while they were slaves that they used later on to become prosperous and to make a lot of money and, to invent things and do things like that. Because, people didn't just have slaves around to beat them all the time. They had them actually do work. Well, those slaves actually, used those things that they were forced to do. And whenever they were freed, then they used them to make money and to become prosperous and stuff like that. And so that was the way that it's described in the Florida thing, and Kamala Harris is all upset about it. And it made me think along these lines a little bit, in line with reparations. Well, the reason that you give reparations is because there's something that you're trying to make up for or to repair. Like there's something you give reparations to somebody because you took them from a place where they would have been, where they would be now, and what you've given them is lower. So in this case, if we're going to just assume that every black person is a descendant of slaves, then basically what you're telling them is well, we took you from your life in Africa and put you in a worse position in America, right? And so we need to pay reparations to make up for where you would be if you would have stayed in Africa. Which if you compare their life, the life of African Americans in this country, where they are represented in the government proportionately to their population. I think it's 12% of they're actually 12% of the congressmen in the United States Congress, or 11 point something percent, are African American, and that's very roughly similar to or very close to the population percentage that they have. They're represented in the government. We've had an African American president. The fact that we had an African American president is not a testimony to the fact that the black community has become superior. It is, what that means is that millions and millions of white people trusted him to be the president.
Right.
They're not saying we trust him because he's black. He's one of us. He's an American. Right. So let's finish out this point here, and then I'll you can react to that. So the reparations part, then let's just compare how African Americans live here and how they would be in Africa. If it was way better for them in Africa, then they would just leave and go over there. The simple fact is that America has not been perfect and slavery was not right. But America has done everything in their power to make this country a place where black people can live better than they can anywhere else on the face of the planet. America has done that.
Right.
And white people have assisted in that.
Right.
And black people have assisted in that. America together has done that. We have made this the best place for a black person to live on the face of the planet.
And we know that our founders did not get everything right.
Right.
But the Constitution that they provided us,
they structured it right, though.
They structured it in such a way that we could get it right.
Yes.
And so that is exactly what we have done. It has been an experiment, and we have seen, as we have consistently, constantly evolved with truth, the truth reveals, and then people that have a backbone stand on that truth, and they make things right that are wrong. Yeah. And that is exactly what has happened. And so that brought us to the place that, yes, you're exactly, I didn't vote for him, but it wasn't because of the color of his skin. It was because of his policies.
Right. Exactly.
And
that's the thing that's so frustrating is the Democrats tell us, well, you didn't vote for Obama because you're a racist. That's not the case. We're voting for Daniel Cameron. It's not because I don't look at Daniel Cameron and say, well, he's black, so I'm voting for him. I look at him and say, he seems to be a good candidate. He's won the primary. And I believe that he's going to be a good conservative candidate. His skin doesn't have anything to do with
That's exactly right.
Right. Just like with Obama, his skin. But the Democrats see everything through the lens of race. Everything is through the lens of race. The simple fact is that majority white men bled and died to free, not white women, not black women and black men, because they were incapable of doing that. when they were enslaved and could not free themselves, then white men bled and died for their freedom.
Yeah.
The freed black men fought for them. When women could not vote, they had no say in this country. White men voted to allow women to vote.
Right.
Without white men voting to do that, women would still not have the ability to vote.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, it's not because of the color of their skin that they were this noble thing, but they were the ones that were in power, and they willingly brought others in to that power.
Right.
That's how it has been throughout the history of this country. The people who are in control now, the racists who are in control now, they're not bringing other people into their coalition. They are selecting the people that they want, and they're isolating everybody else. Conservatives have always expanded the freedoms of others. Always.
Right.
At their own expense and at the expense of their own power and influence. That's the conservative way.
Yeah.
The liberals have always gathered and amassed and greedily grabbed with their little grubby fingers more power and more money at the expense of everybody else.
And that
including
is,
Hunter Biden's bags of cash from China.
that is exactly why that this whole matter of free speech has been so important. And I think people don't understand that what we believe about those specific things is what enables them to be able to say and do what they are doing. And if we believe the way about free speech and about all those things the way that they do, it would totally keep them from being able to, they want to keep us from saying and living out what we believe.
Right.
At the same turn, they want us to they are compelling us to say that we're good with what you're doing and with what you're saying.
Right.
And everything about the Constitution, everything about conservative beliefs and the foundational principles that this nation was built upon works.
Right.
And we have seen it.
That's why we're here.
Progress. We have seen it move forward.
That's why we're not speaking German.
And we are now at the point that if something doesn't happen, we're going to see a major regression from those things. We've already seen it. We've seen what has happened with all of the suppression of speech, all of the push for compelled speech. We have seen how that they have went after the Second Amendment, and they're constantly wanting to remove that. And let me say something about that real quick while I'm here. Protector, provider. So I have the responsibility to protect my family. The society that we live in, especially if you go into our inner cities, especially these inner cities that are run by Democrat policies, they're not safe.
Nope.
I have the responsibility to protect my family.
Right.
And regardless of what the media wants to say, right? You can't always stop a crazy person from doing something crazy, right? And we have seen what has happened. Look at Hunter Biden.
Yeah.
They bypass the law. They're not going to abide by the law. They bypass the law.
Have you seen where they've been locking up the ice cream?
Yes.
They'll lock up the ice cream, but not the criminals.
That's right. But this is what I do know, is that a good person with a gun in the right place with the ability to react is the only way that you can actually eliminate the threat at that moment.
That's right.
All of those rights, all of those things. And again, will you carry a gun, toxic masculinity. It's, you think you're some type of individual that's above and authoritative over it. No, we just have a role here.
Right.
And our role up until 50, 60 years ago was so clear. It was really easy. People didn't question it.
Right.
But now we have fourth graders that are questioning what gender they are.
Right.
And the reason that is happening is because we have had a breakdown of family unit and guidance.
Liberalism is bad for men and for this thing that we're talking about. You know, it's not an accident that as liberal as society has gotten more and more liberal, that fatherless homes have become more and more prevalent.
Yeah.
That's not an accident. That's not a correlation. That's a causation.
Exactly.
But I know, well, there's a difference between correlation and causation. Whenever the same thing has been happening for 50 or 60 years, it's not correlation anymore. It's causation. Liberals are bad for the family, and they proudly display that. They hate the nuclear family, you know. Every place where they have been empowered and controlled, and fatherlessness is worse than anywhere else. You know, all the policies that they make about the black community and for the black community and force on the black community have made the fatherless problem worse. Yeah. It's not made it better.
Right.
The same thing for white people. It's made it worse, not better. You know, they've sectioned us off into these little areas because they're a bunch of racists. Don't ever forget the Ku Klux Klan was a Democrat organization. They sectioned us off, and now they're calling it, you know, black safe spaces.
Yeah.
Which is just segregation. All right.
But we're having safe spaces put everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, everywhere we have to try to accommodate somebody's mood or feeling, or that was never in this society before.
No.
People are resilient. You were making the point earlier about what's going on with Kamala Harris going around and straight up lying.
Right.
Lying about what has happened in Florida and what the governor has done there. And it's been great work, to be honest with you. There's been a lot of great things that have happened and bold moves. Straight up lying. And you know, I'm not advocating for Fox News. I'm just, you know, somebody on their network, this was brought up and made the point about an individual that dealt with Nazi Germany and was a part of the Holocaust, and that came out of that and wrote a book about how that what happened there actually allowed them to renew or rebuild their relationship with God and brought about this mental stability and all of those things. And they just attacked him. You know, you're anti-Semitic if you say that. They totally gaslight. They totally throw these things out in front of people because they want to divert you from what is happening.
Right.
What is happening is they have emasculated men. They have confused the children.
Right.
And they're using that to take over with their policies and their ideas.
And just, it's such a good picture. I saw those coolers with that ice cream and ice cream sandwiches locked up. Right, with all the locks on it.
Yeah.
And it's such a good picture of how stupid liberal policies are and where they bring us to. The ice cream cannot hurt anybody, and it cannot steal itself out of the store, right? They're having to lock up the thing that is completely harmless, except for the pounds that it puts on, which I'm fine with, obviously. They're willing to lock up the thing that is completely harmless. Right, because they will not lock up the people that are doing the harm.
Yeah.
The repeat offenders over and over and over again. CNN did a video inside of a Walgreens, and it got robbed 3 times while they were in there.
Yeah.
On camera, a guy just walks out with stuff. This is their thoughts on guns, too. Right? You can just go ahead and take the ice cream sandwiches out and put the guns in there.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how they act about guns as well. This is how they see things. There's no way the infallibility of their policies is so ingrained into their psyche and into the way that they live their life.
Yeah.
It is impossible for them to even imagine that the way that they govern destroys everything.
Right.
It destroys it. It destroys manhood. It destroys families. It destroys the bodies of teenagers. It destroys unborn children. It destroys our country. It destroys our economy. It destroys Ukraine. It destroys everything.
Yeah.
We might as well just call it the National Destruction Committee, Destruction National Committee, whatever, because that's what they are.
And this is, I brought this up, and I'm going to bring it up a couple more times before we're done here in the next few minutes, about what happened with Jefferson County Public School Board meeting the other night. They had this meeting. They're discussing the policy. They ended up tabling the policy. And there was a child, I believe, that was there that discussed the fact that if they implemented SB 150, that it meant that and I can't remember how they put it, but it was definitely a man who identified as a woman would not be able to go to the proper bathroom. So basically saying, if y'all implement this, then
this was a kid,
when there's school events,
right,
that a man is not going to be able to go into the little girl's bathroom.
Right.
And how many, I want to know, like, I want to understand, like, how many men had something to say about that?
Right.
Because if that's my school, if that's my child, absolutely that's what we mean.
Yeah.
That's exactly why we put the bill in place. Yeah. That's why we did it, because we did not want that to happen, because we are protectors and providers.
Yeah.
And that's what we're supposed to do.
When we were up at the Capitol during the Senate Bill 150, drama that was going on, then one of the, rabid protesters, after everything passed, came by us and said, it was a man that says he's a woman, and said, well, now, first of all, SB 150 had to do with schools and minors and children. Didn't have anything to do with this moron. But anyway, he comes by and says, well, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to be using your bathroom now. Right. Because he's a man and he's going to have to use our bathroom. Now, I didn't see anything about any kind of bathroom thing in there except in school. So unless he's like hanging around schools and little kids all the time, then I think that, I don't think that affected him. But either way, the simple fact is I would definitely rather him be in my bathroom than in my daughter's bathroom.
Exactly right.
And if he's going to go in my daughter's bathroom, then we're going to have a real fight.
I addressed that. Right. I addressed it. I had my daughter up there, and I addressed it while I was up there. And I will say that they responded to it whenever I addressed it, to make sure, because there was a man that went in the women's bathroom.
Right.
And my daughter had been there the day before, and I made it very clear. This will not happen. This will not work out good. They can take it however they want to. As a man, it's my daughter. I'm to be protector and provider. With that being said, California Governor Gavin Newsom, who's probably pretty excited after today, I would say, after what happened to Hunter Biden, it may have made his chances a little bit better at jumping out there as a presidential candidate, but he fined a school district $1.5 million after it rejected a proposed curriculum from the governor's office, and they rejected it for its LGBT content. Okay. So this is what I want to know. Just thinking about this. How many people are applauding this, that he's doing this? How many of you that support this agenda are applauding that this is going on, that he's actually fining the school district, right? Probably withholding money from them, taking money from them for not implementing LGBT curriculum, giving them good job, way to stand up, way to hold your ground. How many people are doing that? And how many people would do it if it was reversed?
Oh, you mean like
for
in
instance,
Kentucky?
In Kentucky, if this was reversed, I wonder if they would still applaud it. Just a question, just something I thought I'd throw out there.
Yeah, I think 2024 is going to be a really interesting legislative session. We'll just put it that way.
I believe it will be.
Yeah, and I mean, all of these things, simply put, Democrats are bad for the country. So stop electing them. I don't know what to tell you. Stop electing the Democrats. We have a president in office who people have testified before Congress under threat of perjury and prison and felonies. They have testified before Congress that he and his, or about to testify before Congress, that he and his son have taken money from foreign governments and then influenced foreign policy.
Yeah.
influence foreign policy based on the money that they took. That's the Democrat president right now.
Oh, yeah.
And he's not even mentally there enough to speak without falling asleep. And he's getting $5 million from the Democrats.
I'm glad you brought this up.
Communists.
I'm glad you brought this up because this was scary today. Mm-hmm. It was really scary. And regardless of how you feel, mm-hmm. Whether you support or don't support, whatever, there's no doubt that Mitch McConnell has got some age on him. We know mm-hmm. that he took a fall here back a while ago. And we saw this happen today with Mitch McConnell.
After finishing the NDA this week, has been good bipartisan cooperation and a string of
and I just want to play a little bit of that just for this point, is that he needs our prayers. Mm. And I don't know what's going on with him. I know that we definitely got to be thinking about that seat and who will be there, because this just shows that he is aged. And again, I know where I'm at with policy, and there are many things that I disagree with there. But all of a sudden, all the Democrats come out, and they're like, oh, my goodness.
I mean, they got 3 stories right here on the top part of CNN.
Everybody's talking about it. All of the mainstream media, leftist media, they're all talking about it. But every single day, Joe Biden goes out there and most of the time cannot string 2 sentences together.
Right.
And they won't say a word about it.
Look, this one here, it says McConnell freezes mid-speech at news conference, comes back to say he's fine. He didn't actually say he's fine. He came back and he said that he got sandbagged, which is referring to, which they didn't put on there, but is referring to Joe Biden tripping over the sandbag and falling flat on his face on the ground.
That's right.
Oh, my goodness.
And so we're constantly being gaslit. That's why we're doing what we're doing here. Yeah. That's the reason why that we are doing this podcast. We want people as much as possible. We want to try to get the truth out there. My email address, joshcalloway79@gmail.com. If you have some ideas for shows that you would like us to do, we would love to get your feedback and try to do what we can to keep you informed, keep people informed as to what is going on across the state and across the country. And pretty funny, speaking of gaslighting, I put out a statement in regard to what the JCPS did. Imagine if they just followed the law and put that energy into making sure children were educated on basic fundamentals.
Oh, there's the thing about the child was worried that his parent, who is a biological man, won't be able to use the girls' bathroom at school.
Yeah, it's unreal. It's unreal what is going on, and they will try their best to divert your attention from what is taking place.
Why is JCPS board making a decision on SB 150? That's like me announcing to the world, like, well, I'm making a decision today on whether or not I'm going to kill someone. It's against the law to kill someone. SB 150 is the law. You don't make a decision on that. You just implement it.
I can hear it now. The Josh Calloway podcast accuses JCPS of killing people.
Well, I mean, what
it's equivalent to murder by not implementing SB 150. You're exactly right. This past week, I had some people that came out in the media and made some statements and basically wanted to know, ask the question what my obsession was with children and sexuality. And I understand. I know where they're coming from. This was a statement I put out. Nice try at diversion. This to Terry at the paper. But all I'm trying to do is stop perverts from sexualizing children. You would think the media would rally around keeping pornographic images and sexually explicit content away from kids, but we have to fight the left in the legislature and the media just to protect kids. You have been given the same images from parents such as Miranda Stovall, who are trying to protect their children, but you refuse to report on what I'm actually trying to stop from infiltrating our schools. If being removed from my committees by my own party doesn't deter me from fighting this filth, your gaslighting definitely will not. I'm open for debate if you want to try to defend children being exposed to this. If anybody should resign, because Linda Blackford had put the article out saying I should resign, should be those in the media claim to be reporters, but actually activists for perversion. And I put some of the images blacked out immediately. They cannot defend this trash.
Right.
They just have to attack the person. They have to discredit the person. And I think this is the whole problem. I think that they have man phobia.
Yeah.
They cannot handle somebody taking a stand, and we're seeing it happen. We're seeing people across this country,
right,
men and women alike, that are taking a stand, taking a role of leadership and guidance and saying, we've had enough. Mm-hmm. That's it. We're not going any further down this direction. And we are seeing this pushback happen. And so what happens is when that takes place, all they can do is discredit the person. Well, take my name out of it.
Right.
Take my personality out of it. Take all of it out of it. Look at the filth and defend it. Tell me it's okay. Put it out there that you think that every kid in Kentucky should see this. I would like to see that and have that proof that they think that it's okay.
Right.
And so what's happened now is that Andy Beshear vetoed the bill that protected children, but now has come out with his own video saying, I support protecting children.
Right.
You know what that is? It's a lack of masculinity.
Yep.
No backbone.
And the media is
He can't even own what he believes.
Yeah.
Because we know that he supports that agenda. Mm-hmm. But he can't even stand up and say that he supports the agenda.
He's got the pictures.
And he can't say that he doesn't support it. Right. It is so sad what we have seen happen. And children need guidance and leadership more than they ever have.
And that's a good reminder, too, that November will be here before you know it.
That's right.
And please, let's elect a man to be in the governor's mansion and not a wuss. You know, I'm just telling you.
That's exactly right.
Somebody who has the basic decency to stand up for children that are being preyed upon by medical horror shows. And they're absolutely terrible drugs and all the stuff that they got. And somebody that has enough backbone to stand up for the unborn, to stand up for workers in Kentucky, all of this stuff that, you could talk about. But
and
let's get the wuss out of the governor's mansion.
Why is he now all of a sudden in the middle of a heated election and he comes out and makes a statement that I don't support the transgender surgeries? And I responded to one of the news articles the other day and said, you literally vetoed the bill.
Why didn't he say that? Why
didn't he come out and say it then?
When it was being passed?
Why did he not?
He brought nothing to the table.
It is a lack of leadership, mm-hmm. and we are missing that in our country. And again, there have been ladies that have done great, resilient things. Mm-hmm. That I am not discounting that at all.
Right.
All I'm saying is that there is a best that has been laid out.
Right.
It is father in his place, mother in her place,
and it's like
children.
saying that the slaves were extremely resilient and that's why they succeeded. Doesn't make slavery right.
Yeah.
At all. They succeeded in spite of their circumstances. The same thing is true whenever we talk about women and families.
Yeah.
That are having to raise a family on their own. Yes, they are resilient. Yes, they succeeded in spite of the circumstances, but it doesn't make it right that they were in that circumstance.
Right.
And it doesn't make it right that our society as a whole is becoming more and more fatherless.
And it doesn't mean that should be what we're promoting.
Exactly. Yep.
And that is what has happened.
Yep.
It's been promoted. It's been torn down. And I believe I believe that the answer to the problem, we know that it's God moving. We know that it's a revival taking place, but we are going to have to see a revival of the family unit, and as it should be, and the way that it was intended to be. And by the way, when this country had its most freedom in every area was when this was working at its best.
Right.
And so we can never forget that. So I encourage you to spread the word about the podcast, like, share, subscribe, get it out there, let people know what we're doing. And again, if you want to contact us and give us some ideas, we'd be glad to talk about some things. Let me tell you some things we've got coming up. Senator Lindsey Titchener is going to join us, and we're going to talk about how and where sex education in our school system came about and the perversion that is associated with it. I talked with State Representative Candy Massaroni today, and she's going to be joining us real soon. She's got a couple bills that she is working on in regard to the definition of a woman and what the definition of a minor. And it's an interesting concept, and I'm going to bring her on and let her discuss that with us, and we'll talk about it. So a lot of things that are coming up, but stand strong. Keep pressing forward with our conservative values. Talk to your friends, your family. Let them know about the November election coming up. Keep that in the forefront of people's mind if you can help in that. And again, I'm not saying that it's the answer to all problems, but it's we are dealing with, as Aaron just pointed out, somebody who is a leftist and doesn't even have a backbone to own his own policies. And wants to stay in the middle. So we've got to make sure that we win that election. But ultimately, what we need is a move of God and for the family unit to be revived again, dads to be dads, moms to be moms, kids to be in their place, and to see this country move back to those conservative Christian principles and see God move and work in our lives again. Thank you for watching the Josh Calloway podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to get as much information out as we can about what is going on in our state, in our communities, and across the country. If you will share, like, and subscribe to this podcast, you could be notified as soon as a new one comes out. Tell your friends and your family about it, because we want people to be informed and engaged in protecting and promoting the truth. Thank you, and God bless.